if I can help you feel that and empathize with where you are based on what I've learned from other customers like you, then guess what? You're going to feel more safe and comfortable.
With the coffee in hand, welcome back to another episode of the Revenue Reimagined podcast. We have with us today a name that is synonymous with the world of startups, more so with the art of storytelling. He's been called a sales professional wrapped in a marketer's body with a super deep understanding of customer advocacy. He's the current CEO of DL Advisory, an early stage storytelling, narrative building, and go-to-market consultancy. But before that, Doug was the growth partner at Emergence Capital, which is an early stage B2B venture firm, where he was instrumental in the growth of some small companies you might have heard of, like, I don't know, Zoom, Bill.com, SalesLoft, Chorus, Ironclad, the list goes on. And prior to that, Doug spent some time selling, building, and scaling at some other small companies, Box, Salesforce, Oracle, Google. So wealth of experience, the master storyteller himself. Doug, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. That was one hell of an intro, man. I got goosebumps, man. I was like, shit, I've done a lot. Also means I'm old.
Sometimes I think I gotta bring Adam around to introduce me to places. He doesn't give me that nice of an introduction, but
see,
this is Dale. He's here.
And it's funny for the audience, we were just reminiscing. Doug and I go back probably 10, 12 years just in the circle of the sales community. It's the first time we met in person or person. So
right.
It's been awesome. Right. But reminiscing is kind of fun. But let's jump a bit into it. So one of the big things is storytelling. Like, you're huge in the storytelling. And what we find a lot with our founders is they don't do a really good job of giving their origin story, how that origin story evolves, and that emotional connection. So I'm curious, as you built out your advisory services, what was the origin story that you started with, and what can you give the audience from how to generate and build their own origin story?
That's a good question, Dale. I appreciate that one right out of the gate. First thing in the morning, got the coffee in hand. You're like, so let's get after it. Can we talk about your childhood trauma? What a lot of people don't know is I'm actually a professionally trained actor. I started acting when I was 5 years old.
Wow.
I went to, it was just like the theater, being on stage, getting into character. One of my first roles I ever got as a child actor was Raggedy Andy in Raggedy Ann and Andy at performance. And there was a creative freedom of expression in that art form. And as I got older, it's interesting, as reality TV shows kicked off, I actually had some friends that happened to be working at CBS and a number of networks, because I grew up in the Bay Area, and they're like, hey, these reality TV shows, you should check them out. You should audition. And I did. And I learned a couple things. One, I landed on 4 different shows, maybe 5. I don't know. We can talk more about that later. But what I learned was I like this art form of communication was really, really interesting and powerful. And the camera and I kind of got along. And so there was this connection of like, okay, so how do I communicate to an audience? Even right now, as I'm looking at a tiny little camera, how do I articulate and communicate to an audience that actually does the one most important thing that we're all trying to do when we're communicating is elicit a positive response, right? And so I learned this and I developed this as I was young and kind of up into my professional life. And when I came back to San Francisco after, I went to University of Oregon and went to Chicago, Denver and Chicago. And anyway, I came back and I was like, oh, cool. Jean Shelton's Actors Labs acting community in San Francisco. She's one of the creators of the kind of the 2 core forms of acting development. And I went to school there and I graduated from it. I realized, like, wow, man, this is so fun. I don't want to move to LA and go be an actor. What I want to do is I want to incorporate this into the professional world. Because growing up in Palo Alto, I got to see companies like HP and Sun and
Sure.
even the likes of Google and Facebook and Twitter really kind of blow up. And what I realized is, like, this vehicle of communicating, incorporating story form in communicating is so powerful. And yet when we are at work, we speak in bullets and fragments, and we talk speeds and feeds, and we talk a bunch of BS. And you know what I realized, and then I had the good fortune of working this tiny little company called Salesforce in the early days. And, you know, one of the greatest marketing, I would argue one of the greatest marketing organizations, sales and marketing organizations ever to be created. I mean, it's got the sales in its title. It's kind of cool. And what I learned was there in particular was this whole notion of like, well, look, the reason why we speak in speeds and feeds and bullets and fractured statements is because we're talking about ourselves. Right. And the only way to actually really get customers to showcase this customer centricity and customer love is to speak about them. Well, and the easiest way to speak about them is to tell their story. Like, oh, okay, cool. So like it all kind of fit and played well together. And it was interesting. So I left Salesforce and I went to Box. I went to go work for Aaron Levy, and he's a pretty phenomenal orator. He's so effing smart. And it was really interesting. And there's a pivotal moment in my career where we're trending to about $100 million. And we just hired this new CRO. It's probably about 10, 12 years ago, dashing young man who was like there to take us public. And, of course, anytime you hire a new sales leader wants to walk around the floor and meet all the sales team. And so we do, and I'm introducing him to all the players and, you know, all the people that he needs to know. And, he asks everybody, he's like, okay, well, how do you talk about Box to like 25 different people? We got 25 different answers. Not uncommon. But what was common was there was no consistency at the core of who we say we are and what we do. There was no value in it. It was all me. Look at us. And unfortunately, when we're thrown more products, what happens is we default back to our comfort zone. So in Box's case, it's like, oh, we're in cloud storage. And of course, if Aaron ever heard anybody say that, he'd fire them on the spot. I mean, not really, but theoretically. And so I realized, I'm like, we have a problem. We don't know how to pull and infuse our customer language and our customer stories and our customer experiences into the way in which we talk about who we are and what we do. So I've been at Box about, I don't know, maybe 5 years. And I went to Aaron. I said, hey, I want to create a new job for myself. He's like, what? I was like, I want to, I'm going to create a job for myself. It's called the Chief Storyteller. And I am going to reorient how we talk about who we are. And then I'm going to train everybody on that, because the reality is there's one thing to create the stories, right? Which just takes some work, marketing.
Sure.
I'm looking at you, marketers, you like none of this problem, solution, ROI. That's such BS. So marketers need to figure out how to create these stories, and then sellers actually need to know how to become a better storyteller, how to look for the signals to get into a story, and how to look for the signals to get out of a story. Because I don't want you telling stories 24/7, because that's just a weird form of communicating. But you need to understand the mechanics of it. So that's how it happened.
Cool. I love it.
Oh, that was a really long story. I apologize.
but it's so true, right? We as sellers, and we work with typically early stage, call it A to C stage startups, some pre-seed. And I have a Post-it here on my desk that ties similar to what you're saying, Doug. And I ask every founder the same question: what's the number one problem your product solves for your prospects or your customers? And most founders that we speak with don't tell a great story. They don't talk from the buyer's perspective. They talk about, it's a feature dump of, well, my product does this and we do this and we do this, and this.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing you saw a shit ton of that when you were at Emergence, probably now, and even back in Box and Salesforce.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You're totally right. And this is look, founders aren't the only ones that suck at telling stories, by the way. Salespeople also suck at telling stories. Just
100%.
By the way, so do marketers. I'm going to keep picking on marketers today. I don't know why. I still have my coffee. I'm just like, we're going to duke it out, marketers. Because you can make sellers' lives a hell of a lot easier if you actually help them with the things that they need. Yeah, I'm going at you, marketers. I'm looking at you, and we'll get there, and I'll tell you what you need to do for them. But so back to your question about, like these origin stories, these founders. Well, here's the problem. On the one hand, you have I feel like you have a lot of founders that are like, they're hammers looking for nails. They're really effing smart. They know how to build product. They saw a problem in their company and they experienced it. Like, let's go solve for that and let's go build a company out of it. And you're like, all right, dude, that's like a feature. That's not a real company. And so you're kind of like, well, what's your connection to this problem? Oh, I saw our sales team struggling with it, so I decided to go build it. It's like, all right, that's interesting, but do you really get it? Do you really understand why it's a problem? And and this kind of goes back to the ethos of when you're working with early stage founders that are product or engineering led, and even sellers, because we train them to do this. We focus too much on the what we do and how we do it, and we don't focus enough on the why. Like, look, as investors, we're making bets on people. We're not making bets on your technology. The truth is we're betting on you to out technology everybody else, out execute everybody else. And in order to do that, you actually truly need to understand the problem from your buyer or your even the user's perspective and viscerally get it. And understand what it is doing to them in their lives personally. It's interesting. I came up with an example that I came up with at Box, and this is tripping people out. They're like, cool, who's Box? What do you do? I'm like, oh, we're in the business of saving lives. Everyone's like, what? Aren't you a cloud content storage thing? I'm like, oh, no. We are in the business of saving lives. And then I would explain the situation of a doctor sitting in the ER, dealing with a patient who's on a multitude of medications and having all sorts of complications and has to go all the way down the hall to log into an old archaic system to try and look up these symptoms to try and determine what they recommend. It's like, well, what if he just had an iPad? He's like, this is the issue. Boom, done. Oh, cool. This is what I need to know. And the difference between the 60 seconds walking down the hall and logging in and doing this right now could save somebody's life. Right. And so it's orienting. And ultimately, if you really think about it, that like the easiest way to become a better storyteller is just like spend a lot of time with your customers, like get in their seat, sit in their seat, get in their shoes, think about what they're giving up in their life to try and get their actual job done. Right. Sure. And it matters. And here's the other thing too, for founders, since you all work with early founders, we all need a purpose. And especially Gen Z right now, we need a purpose for going into work. I need a purpose for working for you and working with this company and trying to solve this problem. If you don't give me a good purpose behind it, which is more of the why do we do this? Right. Well, then it's kind of hard to get behind it. And then I feel like I'm just kind of selling widgets.
Well, it drives back into earlier, we were having a conversation on leadership, right? And so how do leaders become better leaders? And when they talk to the organization, it's about the why. Like we can say, make these calls, have a storytelling process, et cetera, but why are you doing that? Because now you can be relatable to the customers. And a lot of times when we'll train sales reps, I like to train from objections versus feature functionality. Like you'll hear about our product 3 million times between now and the end of the month, but you won't hear, forget about price sensitivity, that kind of bullshit excuse. Like what are the real objections? Well, I'm worried that you guys won't be able to fit into our, InfoSec infrastructure. Okay. That's a real objection that we now need to solve for, because that's a pain point that the customer is going to solve on. I just find we don't deal with objections the right way.
So to me, that's a great entry point. And again, when it comes to storytelling, I don't want you to talk in story form 24/7 because that's just weird. We don't do that in our personal lives. Right. So like you got to know when to get into and out of story. Someone gives you an objection. It's a great opportunity to tell a story, to like reorient, like, okay, I like totally recognize because I've heard it before. In fact, I was talking to Steve and, this is what he shared with me, about this, how it fits in the InfoSec ecosystem. One of the most important objections that I think nobody spends enough time on, the biggest fundamental issue that we all face in the world of SaaS is change. And change management. We just think our product is so easy and it's so powerful and it's so simple and it hooks into everything and everyone's just going to use it. It's like, no. And I've been saying this phrase for, I don't know, probably feels like 2 decades now, but adoption is ROI. Adoption equals ROI. It's not the new ROI anymore because I've been saying it for so damn long, but it really truly is. And so if people aren't using your product in a way that you think is likely to deliver the most value, then you're missing the big important salient point here, which is all about change and change management. And again, you could tell an amazing story about how you can drive change management into an organization pretty quickly and seamlessly. But you got to know it. You got to understand it from a customer's perspective. So look, the reality is there's so many opportunities to incorporate story form and narrative form into your company and into how you communicate, not just internally, but also externally. People just need to be more consciously aware of it.
People buy from people. That's why companies who invest in meaningful connections win. The best part? Gifting doesn't have to be expensive to drive results, just thoughtful. Sendoso's intelligent gifting platform is designed to boost personalized engagement throughout the entire sales process. Trust me, I led sales for a Sendoso competitor, and I could tell you no one does gifting better than Sendoso. If you're looking for a proven way to win and retain more customers, visit sendoso.com. Where does that responsibility lie, Doug? I love how you keep calling out marketing, but is it marketing? Is it sales? Is it getting everyone around the table? Like, how do we build that story?
Yeah, totally. Well, I'd say first of all, it starts at the top. Look, great leaders are usually great storytellers. They just are. They're great communicators. And they understand how to communicate from different perspectives and points of view. Right. So and oftentimes great leaders speak from the point of view of their customers. It's because they spend a ton of time with their customers. All those CEOs out there that are afraid to talk to their customers, I think it's largely because they don't know what to ask or what to say or how to have those conversations, which is unfortunate. You need to go spend some time getting comfortable with that, because all the great leaders that I know are super, super entrenched with their customers. And so they just have a natural arsenal of stories to tell because they've been spending all this time with customers. And our job is to help, you, Adam, and Dale feel safe and comfortable and not alone in dealing with the problem that you're dealing with. And so if I can help you feel that and empathize with where you are based on what I've learned from other customers like you, then guess what? You're going to feel more safe and comfortable. So it starts at the top, number one. So your leaders have to get better at telling story instead of dictation. By the way, you can still use facts and stats and all that stuff. Just lead with stories because it's a better form of connecting and communication and empathy demonstration. But when it comes to actually creating the stories, I'm going to actually lean on customer success first. And here's why. Because they're closer to the customers. They know in your customers' words the true value that you deliver and where in their jobs, in your customer's life, where does that value impact them? To what degree? Right? I'm not talking about saving time, reducing risk. That's all great. Yeah, CEOs, CFOs care. I get it. That matters. But I also care about hey, can I give Sue, this mid-level marketing manager who works at Coca-Cola, can I give her Sundays back? Can I give her freedom to actually be able to go to her kids' softball games? I don't know. I want to know where we hit people, in real life, not so much just at the bottom line or top line, however you want to think about it. So I'm going to look to customer success. I want some of that language. I want some of that juice that they get from talking to customers. And I want that fed back to both product and I want that fed back to marketing. Now, marketers, I'll pick on you here for a minute because y'all should be good at this. We were talking about this offline before we started, so I'm just going to say it now. We do spend all this time training sellers and SDRs and customer success folks and doing renewals and upsells and all this stuff. How do we train marketers? Where's their training? Where's their development? It's funny. I do all these storytelling workshops all around the world, and and most of the time it's for sellers. And I'm like, I want all customer success and I want all marketing there. I want anybody that is customer facing because, hey, marketers, your job is to help us sellers figure out the core components of the stories we need to be able to tell, right? So as marketers, here's the key, marketers. Your customers are not characters. Cisco's not a character. Coca-Cola's not a character. Home Depot's not a character. I don't give a shit about those logos. I want to know the people in those companies whose lives you're changing, right? Open Table Joe. I was just at a company in Atlanta yesterday, and we were talking about Open Table Joe and his role. And it wasn't so we weren't talking about Open Table. I was like, I don't care about Open Table. I care about Joe. And what was Joe dealing with? What was Joe's life before this, before we stepped in and helped out, right? Because there's a couple things that are really critical in storytelling. One, we need characters, right? Two, we also need context, right? So most stories are missing context. When you asked me, Dale, about like, what's my origin story? I went all the way back, right? I started acting when I was 5 years old.
5 or 6.
Right. So I gave you context. Now, you don't know how necessarily old I am, but like a long time ago. But now you have some context because I had a starting point. I set the stage for this journey I was going to take you on, right? And that's often what's missing is that context. So that context is either from what was to what is or to what could be.
Yep.
Right. And so when I have these things, when I have these elements, it makes it easier for me to be able to tell this story. The other thing that's really missing oftentimes in our stories, and this is an exercise that I do with everybody. So here's a free tip for everybody. Go through all of your customer stories. Ask all of your salespeople, what's the point of this story?
Yep.
What's the point of it? I did this.
I'm also curious how, like, what stories the salespeople are telling, do they really align to what ends up as a result? Like, if customer success is getting results on this,
yeah,
are we telling these stories, or are we telling some completely different value story?
Well, most often we're telling a different story because the information from customer success isn't usually fed back, right? And so it's that feedback loop that's usually broken. And it's missing. And so customer success is telling one story and sales is trying to tell another because sales thinks, well, we're on the front end of the process and customer success is on the back end of the process. And so, maybe our story should be different. The truth is look, the reality is every company needs a story library and you need story time in your company. Like you literally in your team meetings, you need story time and everyone needs to get up and tell a story. And then you're going to evaluate whether or not that was a real story or not, or whether or not it was just a list of a statement of facts or just a sequence of events. Because oftentimes people just don't understand the difference. Yeah, it's the bedtime story, but let's do it at work, right? So we can start to build this library so that we know what stories to use when. Because I guarantee the companies that you work with, they likely have 2 or 3 stories that they all tell over and over and over and over again, and they're not necessarily going to be that relevant to every audience that they speak to. Mm-hmm. When I'm talking about a story library, I want a story library for every one of your buyer personas across every stage in the sales process, because you should be telling stories even at the commercial stage when you're negotiating, and you should be telling stories during the handoff when you're giving to customer success. It's not just in the front to like tell you my origin story.
So that's super interesting. Sorry, Dale. That's super interesting to me, and I think a lot of people don't think that way, right? Like we talk about origin story a lot, and we talk about the importance of a proper handoff and making sure that, we're setting the stage. But I don't think I've ever heard anyone say it in the phrase of like, use storytelling throughout, right? When we do that handoff, why is this important to do it this way? And what do we see? And what does it get you? And tying it all together. So yeah. Super interesting. Sorry, Dale, I stepped on you, man.
But Adam, just think about this for a second. Buyers, people buy from what? People we what?
Like.
And
trust.
Yes. How do we build that likability and that trust? Not from spewing off a whole bunch of facts and stats.
Yeah, not feature dumping.
And tell me how
relatability, storytelling, relatability.
Right.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't you? I think part of the challenge is people, 1, don't have the stories to tell. 2, don't have the skills to actually tell the stories. And 3, don't know when to actually tell the story for which persona and which stage. Like what story?
Or they just don't practice. At all.
And that's the other thing. They also don't practice because it takes work. Like right. I was literally in a session yesterday, and I like to put people on the spot, and a great exercise is just
Dale, you're about to be put on the spot. Dale, tell a story.
So a great exercise is like, okay, so Dale, why revenue?
Why partner with Adam? That's a long story.
Yeah, why partner with Adam? Why?
Because you wanted the number to go up and to the right. Simple story.
But here's the thing: like both of you need to have your own why story. Why did you start Revenue Reimagined? Why work with each other? Why does this matter? Because if you don't have your own personal why story, and this is why you work at any company, it's hard for people to connect. Because I want to know that. As a buyer, I want to know that. Like, okay, why did you go there? Out of like all the things that you could do, why go do this? Because now I'm getting to know you. And as I get to know you, I'm starting to build a connection. And in every interaction that we have with anyone in particular in this world, our job is to do three things: build a connection, demonstrate some level of empathy, and credibility.
100%. I love that. Our story is very long, so our story is not many bullet points. Going back to leadership a little bit, Doug. You've gone over you've gone through like Oracle, Salesforce as some of the young age, Box, and brought to 100 million. How has your leadership evolved over time through all these stages of your career?
Ooh, wow. I mean, that's like, we're back to like childhood trauma conversation here, Dale.
That's what I like to put. I like to put the dagger in.
I don't know if it's a dagger. I think it's more like, look, as we mature, we recognize that there's a lot of different ways to get things done. I feel like in my younger years, my biggest kind of leadership gap was like, I was just too much of a control freak. And it's like, typical frontline sales leader where you're like, okay, let me take it over. There's an important call. I need to get the deal done in order to actually hit my number. You can kind of feel the conversation is not really going where it needs to go. And it's like, okay, so Adam, let me just kind of summarize where we are and what, and I want to get into like these two kind of hurdles that I think are really keeping us from moving forward. Right. Next thing you know, the reps are like, okay, cool. You go take it.
Yeah.
And I think, and I think oftentimes I have a lot of energy, and it's like, sometimes I used to think that it's like, it's just easier if I do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And look, I still struggle with that because I still like, oh no, I got it. I'm Superman. I can do 18 different things. But I feel like, to me, leadership is much more a people responsibility role, and that like you really need to understand your people from a perspective of who they are as human beings and what really matters to them and what's going on in their world, and like really have a very, very high, my boy JB and I talk about this all the time, but like a really, really high give a shit factor, and your actions need to be in line with your words. And I think the other thing too is like, and of course my good friend Todd is like all about transparency. Like the more we acknowledge as leaders, our shortcomings, doesn't mean you are, people are going to question your ability to actually lead this company and take it public or whatever. It's like, no, you're human. We're all human. And we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And my job as a leader is to kind of fill those gaps that I have with people who I would argue are way smarter and way better than me. I'm not going to be perfect. I'm going to make mistakes.
And we need to train leaders, just like you were talking about training marketing. Like we need to train leaders and give them the ability to have some transparency, some accountability, some self-awareness. And I think,
check.
I think those are all the things that I've seen as I've grown through leadership, is the insecurity you have as a young leader into the ability to know you're going to get more done if you circle yourself with people that are smarter than you and do things in a different way. And I think we need as a community of leaders to do a better job of helping train future leaders, because that's the only way a lot of these companies are going to grow properly.
I agree. But the other thing is too, I think unfortunately, we live in a society of we're just more fear oriented and fear driven, right? And so it's like, especially if you're look, the two loneliest jobs in a company are the CEO and head of sales, like straight up. Marketers, no offense, but y'all can hide what you do and numbers. Look at all these leads. You got the Glengarry leads, and salespeople. It's pretty straightforward. Like. Salespeople are like, you either hit your number or you don't, and if you don't, it's your fault. You're out. Right. And it's like, oh, well, that's interesting. Well, let's see. The product doesn't work. We can't get anybody implemented. Nobody knows about us out in the market. I've been asking for new product capabilities for 2 years, not getting any of that. But sure, I suck as a sales leader, so go ahead and fire me. It's like, we know going into this that like this is what we're dealing with. And I think, I think it's hard for people to have really honest conversations because guess what? It starts at the very top. Investors, like I have a fiduciary responsibility of I've invested in your business to show that this is a good investment. And I care about two things, doing deals and increasing valuation. And if you're not increasing valuation, then we've got to make some changes here. If we're not actually hitting, escape velocity here, we've got to potentially make some changes. Unfortunately, if we're missing our number one change is got to bring in a new sales leader. I can't tell you how many times I would be talking like board members off the ledge. Like, okay, can we not freak out right now and go fire this person? And can we kind of focus on some of the other things that are not going right in the business and think about this holistically? And think about the implications. Like if you use them as a whatever, what do they call it?
Scapegoat?
Like, use them as scapegoat or like, oh, they're going to send a message. It's like, oh, awesome,
yeah, the example.
Yeah.
You got to fire the sales leader today, right now.
Yeah, like these early founders, if it's their first time, they don't know how to do this, and they're getting pressure from their board and their investors, and they're lonely. They're like, who do I talk to? I can't go talk to my team because they're gonna maybe start to lose some confidence in me. I can't go talk to my investors because they're gonna likely lose some confidence in me. So I need to go talk to other CEOs who maybe are in the middle of doing this, maybe not, maybe so you got to there's a level of vulnerability and transparency that you got to get comfortable with there as a leader.
And I think that's why we actually have a really good play in the market, because we actually play that like advisory role to help CEOs. Like, how do I have this conversation with somebody that can help me work through it instead of being in my own echo chamber? Like, I know I'm a victim of Source. When I was the CRO, head of sales, like I always tried to play the political game because obviously you don't want to get fired. You're trying to play inside the lines. But like as the position that Adam and I are in, like we don't have to. Like we tell you the truth. Whether you like it or not, that's going to be up to you. Because we've seen this script. We know the story. The ending doesn't bode well for you.
The challenge I think we have though in our advisory capacities is like what I often struggle with is like I can tell you 100 times, but you have to choose to listen to go follow the advice. I've seen this movie 1,000 times. I know what's likely going to happen. Likely, I don't know for sure. And I'm going to tell you all these things, and then it's your job to go do something about it. And that again kind of goes back to that leadership. It's like that gets frustrating. It's like, oh my gosh, don't do that. Oh, you did it. Okay, well, that's not going to bode well. Like, hey, look, you're paying me to tell you the truth. I told you the truth. You listen. So, okay, that's kind of on you. But I want to see everyone successful, and I don't want to see, it's like a parent. Like, I don't want to see you make the same mistakes that I saw the older brother make, right? Because, I know if you jump off that, I know if you, go off that BMX ramp,
you're going to break your damn arm.
Greater than 50% chance something bad's going to happen. I'm just saying. I've seen this before. Oh, I know you're special. But okay, do it.
Everyone's a snowflake, Doug. Everyone.
Yeah, isn't that true? It's true. Damn, we covered a lot.
I think, it's so funny to me, and we did cover a lot, and I wish we had more time because I could go for another 30 minutes. But when we talk to founders and sales team and what you're saying about like that sales leader being fired, like Dale and I have both been in that seat on both sides of that seat for the record. And it's often the wrong gut decision to make. Like, listen, there are times you absolutely need to let a sales leader go. Make no mistake about it. But generally speaking, the problem, and we see this all the time, is, well, the sales leader was hired 34 days ago and you expected them to miraculously fix everything that the previous sales leader you fired in 34 days and, triple the revenue. And it just doesn't work that way.
That's the worst. You're like, oh, wait, so you're hiring someone to fix all the shit that you couldn't fix the first time around, and you're only giving them 3 months.
Right.
Why do sales leaders only get 3 months to ramp?
I don't know.
Like, we hire an enterprise AE and we give them 12 months to ramp. Well, likelihood is like 6 nowadays, but okay, let's just
3.5
on 9. Let's land on 9. Well, we get a sales leader, you only get 3 months. That's it. Like, if you haven't fixed everything and we're not like starting to show progress, it's like, dude, in 3 months, I'm just now figuring out like how the hell I get my marketing counterpart and I to agree on a number that is not quote unquote leads.
100%.
Yes.
Okay, Doug,
yeah.
let's wrap this up a little bit. You ready for some rapid fire, and we'll get you running?
Let's do it.
All right. First question. Here's the rules. You get 10 words or less. Otherwise, there's this miraculous gong that comes out through Riverside. It's the special platform we have, and it gongs you and tells you to be quiet. Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
If you weren't in tech and you couldn't act, what other profession would you be in?
Golfer.
Nice.
No hesitation.
What's the handicap?
What's your favorite?
I'm currently an 8.
Woof.
Wow.
Trying to get to scratch.
Yeah.
Wow. What's your favorite guilty pleasure snack?
Only playing for 4 years. Guilty pleasure snack. Chips and salsa.
Okay. No guac? Just salsa?
No, just chips and salsa.
Okay, cool.
Don't complicate this shit, Dale.
Yeah, I'm simple.
Besides yourself, who's the best storyteller you know?
Ooh.
I have 2. I'm also biased because I love them both. They're very dear friends. I probably have 3 because this is how we communicate. This like we talk in this form. So Jen Allen, John Barrows, and Amy Volas, and the 4 of us just sit around and tell stories. We don't BS each other.
Cool.
I love it. Doug, you've worked with a lot of startups, both as yourself working there and also with Emergence. When you look at the state of startups today, what's one word to describe the state of the startup ecosystem?
Struggling.
Yep.
Ooh.
I like it.
Yeah.
Last one. Let's wrap this up. Dream vacation destination.
Ooh. Scotland.
Scotland.
Nice.
Play a little bit of golf.
Nice.
You got to go play the old course.
Yeah, play the old course. Knew that was coming.
Love Scotland. I had the best Thai food of my life still to this day in some back alley in Edinburgh.
I love it. I love it.
You just never
by the way, I've been to Scotland and I love it. I went there for the art festival in August, and it's the craziest town on the planet in that month. I just want to go there to play golf. My first response actually was Greece, but I'm like, yeah, but I can't really play golf out there. Just hang out and look at pretty water. Cool.
Doug, thank you so much for joining. Where can people learn more about your new advisory services? How can they find you? How can they interact with you besides LinkedIn? We know LinkedIn.
Yeah. LinkedIn is funny. Out of most social media platforms, I probably spend more time there than anywhere else. I'm old school like that. But you can find me at dladvisory.co or douglandis.com. They both go to the same place. Just find me there.
Cool, man.
I'm not
Doug, thank you so much for joining.
This is awesome. Thanks, guys. This is really fun.
Cheers.